Thank you for joining us on the program from the National Assembly. I am Ignatius Nkwo. Well, the Senate has already reconvened for today's plenary. And from the order paper, quite a number of bills for consideration today. 5 bills will be coming for first reading. That is, after the first reading, the next thing is the second reading of those bills. And then on the aspect of second reading of bills on the floor of the Senate today, we have about 7 bills coming for second reading, and quite a number of them are based on agriculture. About 3 of them are centered on agriculture and agricultural development. And at the moment, Senate is already considering a bill that seeks to establish a fund for agriculture. But we have with us here the chairman, Senate Committee on Rules and Business, Senator Sadiq Umar, who is always here to give us an insight into what to expect by the time the Senate takes off fully. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So what are we expecting apart from what is already ongoing?
Yeah, basically, like you've seen on the order paper, we have 5 bills for first reading and then about 7 bills for second reading. We also have a motion, on societies and thrift societies, moved by my own brother, Senator Lola Ashiro. Yeah, what is significant to me, if you notice in the order paper, is that most of the first readings, you will see bills on 1999 Constitutional Amendment, and the DSP have several such bills. It's serious business for us to review the 1999 Constitution, so we are focusing on that. And even in the second reading, you will notice that we also have a bill on National Electoral Offences Commission, because to us, we need to move, our elections to the next level by ensuring we improve on the system. So, from the other people, you can see it's deliberate that whatever we are bringing is to fit into our night legislative agenda. And today we are focusing more on both establishment of some institutions. We have bills for elderly people to be able to give them privileges, but most importantly, to review the 1999 Constitution and then face electoral offenses.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Well, we'll now go straight to the Red Chamber to follow proceedings for the day.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for the protection. Electoral crimes help election riggers and offenders save against the democratic will of the electorate. Electoral offenses give birth to political apathy that forces the electorate to incrementally disengage from political process. Political violence precipitates vicious cycles of political instability and national insecurity. Electoral corruption leads to avoidable waste of public resources and threatens national development in social, political, and economic contexts. Civil disturbances and violence resulting from manipulated elections strain otherwise harmonious communal relationships with adverse effects on national cohesion, peace, and security. Because rigged elections throw up political schemes that are not conducive for business, the national economy decays from declining foreign direct investments, declining gross domestic product, increasing unemployment, and general fall in volumes of both local and global commerce. Electoral offenses are self-inflicted injuries to be avoided at all costs. Decisive deterrence through efficient criminal prosecutions is the most effective strategy for defeating electoral offenses. To this end, Sections 149 and 150, subsection 2 of the Electoral Act 2010 as amended, respectively, vest the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) with the discretion and powers to prosecute alleged electoral offenders. For clarity, both sections provide as follows. Section 149, I quote, "The Commission shall consider any recommendation made to it by a tribunal with respect to the prosecution by it of any person for an offense disclosed in any election petition." 150 subsection 2 also says the prosecution under this act shall be undertaken by legal officers of the Commission, INEC, or any legal practitioner appointed by it. By the wording of Section 149 and Electoral Act 2010 as amended, INEC is not clearly enabled to prosecute alleged offenders unless otherwise determined by a tribunal. More significantly, with less than 100 legal officers and other operational deficiencies, INEC clearly does not have the needed human capacity to prosecute electoral offenses committed across Nigeria's 119,973 polling units, 8,809 wards, 365 constituencies, 109 senatorial districts, and 774 local governments. By the foregoing statistics, it is unrealistic to expect INEC to conduct free, fair, and credible elections and simultaneously prosecute offenses arising from the same elections. Indeed, INEC has itself admitted that it lacks the wherewithal to cleanse the system. Its failure to prosecute even 1% of 870,000 alleged electoral offenses in the 2011 general elections is an affirmation of the necessity of a paradigm shift on how we deal with electoral offenses. INEC's open failure to prosecute electoral offenses has helped to sustain a reign of systemic election rigging, electoral violence, and manipulation. Disenfranchisement of the voters by information, ballot stuffing, voters register manipulation, declaration of false election results, destruction of invalidation of valid ballots, tampering with election systems, and voter impersonation. This has itself fueled patriotic call for INEC to be divested of that statutory duty. It is widely agreed that this duty is an undue burden on INEC. It distracts INEC from its core constitutional mandate of conducting elections. And the answer is in the establishment of a commission charged with this important duty. Some human rights activists even argue that under our criminal jurisprudence, it is unsound for INEC to double as both the complainant and prosecutor in matters of alleged electoral offenses. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, as indicated earlier, even the national leadership of INEC has consistently called for reforms in this regard. According to Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, chairman of INEC, I quote, "As long as electoral offenders are punished, we will continue to be faced with electoral violence. We need electoral offenses commission or tribunal to deal with electoral offenders." This is reported from Daily Trust, 9 February 2016. Before then, Professor Atahiru Jega, the then former national chairman of INEC, has similarly stated as follows, and I quote, "I was privileged to serve in the Justice Mohammed Al-Uwais-led committee, and I know we made a recommendation for the establishment of a tribunal to deal with the impunity in the way electoral offenses are being committed in Nigeria," unquote. This is quoted from the Nation newspaper, 9th October 2013. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, indeed, what we are doing now is not new. In 1954, that is 63 years ago, Malaysia enacted her Election Offences Act 1954 to prevent electoral offenses and corrupt illegal practices at elections, to provide for the establishment of enforcement teams and for matters connected therewith. In the United Kingdom, the Representation of the People Act 1983, the Representation of People Act 1985, the Political Parties, Elections and Referendum Act of 2000, and the Electoral Administration Act 2006 are legislations to prevent and punish electoral fraud. The Kingdom of Nepal passed its Election Offences Punishment Act in 1990 and amended it in 2007 to consolidate prevailing laws related to election offences and punishment. In Canada, the Fair Elections Act 2014 was passed to impose stiffer penalties for electoral offences. The Philippines Electoral Reform of 1987, Act number 6646, was enacted to guarantee electoral sanity. Kenya passed its own Election Offences Act 2016 in response to growing electoral impunity and violence. The list continues. Using Malaysia's 1954 Electoral Offences Act as a reference point, It will seem we are late by almost 63 years, but as they say, it's better late than never. This is our moment to establish our own enforcement teams with the National Electoral Offences Commission. As leaders, it is a unique privilege to be part of the history of establishing the NEOC as an agency that will be dedicated to the deterrence and punishment of electoral offenders. But one must quickly acknowledge that this road is not altogether new for us as a nation. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, you will recall that after the 2007 general election, I beg your pardon, there was a mistake, 2007 general elections, our then President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua of blessed memory inaugurated the Honorable Justice Mohammed Uwais Electoral Reform Committee to resolve quote-unquote flaws and shortcomings in our elections. That eminent committee received and processed 1,466 public memoranda, held public hearings where 907 presentations were made, accepted inputs from various national jurisdictions, and engaged constructively with our former leaders and all critical stakeholders. In its final report, the committee recommended that for INEC to function efficiently, some of the functions currently performed by it should be assigned to other agencies. All offenses committed within the electoral context should be prosecuted expeditiously. The prevailing atmosphere of impunity with regard to election offenses should be ended by prosecuting and holding accountable those responsible for electoral offenses, including those of criminal nature. This will reduce the impunity which has marred Nigeria's electoral process to date and which threatens to undermine citizens' confidence in the country's political institutions. A special prosecutorial body to be known as Electoral Offences Commission should be established to work independently in the arraignment and prosecution of electoral offenders. This will include offences arising from failings of INEC before, during, and after voting day. The Electoral Offences Commission should cooperate closely with security agencies to prosecute persons accused of committing such offenses. This bill draws positive inspiration from the great work of that committee of great Nigerians, and it is hereby duly acknowledged with the immense gratitude to them. This bill is in 7 parts and has 48 clauses. Part 1 is on the establishment of the National Electoral Commission members of the Electoral Commission members of the Commission, their tenures and related matters. Part 2 outlines the functions and powers of the Commission, while Part 3 is on the staff of the Commission. Part 4 is on electoral offenses. This part deals with offenses arising from violating existing laws and newly defined offenses. Part 5 is on courts and their jurisdiction and special powers. Part 6 is on financial provisions for the proposed Commission, while Part 7 deals with miscellaneous provisions, including general savings and other legislations. On the whole, the bill is very well organized. It is a product of vast research. In conclusion, Mr. President, my respected distinguished colleagues, going by the huge positive public interest generated by even its first reading alone, it is very clear that Nigerians overwhelmingly wants us to pass this bill into law now. Let us once again assure Nigerians and the international community of our commitment to sanitize our electoral environment by passing this bill into law. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, in compliance with Order 773 of our Senate Standing Rules, I have attached with Appendix 1, which is the financial compendium of the projected financial implications of this bill to the federal government. For the greater good of our republic, I hereby humbly move for the second reading of this bill to be taken. Thank you very much.
Senator Surajuddin Ajibola Basiru.
Thank you, Mr. President, our distinguished colleague.
My name is Dr. Surajuddin.
Distinguished colleagues, I have not seen the compendium, but let me say this, and this is not to begin this debate. Even without the compendium, I think this is a well-deserved this. So continue.
Thank you, President, Your Excellency, distinguished colleague. My name is Dr. Surajuddin Ajibola Bashiru. I represent Osun Central Senatorial District. I think I'm honored to be privileged to be allowed to second this important second reading of the bill. And I think it also speaks to the legislative agenda of the Nigerian Senate. One of the points that was raised and that we adopted was that we must act to reform our electoral system. The basis of democratic governance is election. And for there to be proper democracy, the election must not only be free, it must be seen to be free, fair, and credible. In an atmosphere that electoral victory is secured in the circumstance of violence, circumstance of inducement, circumstance of manipulation, it could not have been said that the people have been able to elect democratically their representative. And closely allied to the sanity and credibility of election is ensuring a crime-free electoral process. I've also had the privilege of reading the report of the Justice Owais report on electoral reform. It's a report that I believe most of us have read, and it's a report that beyond the recommendation of the reform of the criminal adjudicatory process for election, there are also some other salient provisions that I believe some other senators will also bring. And I had the occasion to deliver a paper on democracy and rule of law for the NUJ Kwara last Thursday. One of the issues that arose was also issue of sanity of electoral process. And I threw a challenge that before or on the day of every election, we have instances that people were apprehended, they will be paraded on national television. Immediately after the announcement of results, it will be as if nothing has happened. And what has happened, if you don't have a sanitized electoral process, is that there will be apathy. And when there is apathy, people could not have been said to have been properly represented. But be that as it may, I think the bill is talking about setting up a prosecutorial agency to prosecute offense. In order to have a proper bite, I think it would be necessary to adopt a fast-track procedure for criminal adjudication under that commission, so that maybe they will be given special preferences to be able to timely, just like the tribunal, prosecute and come to conclusion. It will not go well when electoral offenders were apprehended, they are being prosecuted by the commission, and they are still in the process of prosecuting an offense under one election, and 4 years prosecution is going on. So I would suggest that possibly at the committee level, it will be important to get possibly rules and regulation that will ensure expeditious consideration and speedy trial of electoral offender. I strongly second that the bill be given second reading. I thank you, Mr. President.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleagues. Thank you very much, Senator Kiari, for bringing to fore this particular critical aspect of our electoral procedure. I have every support for this. I just want some clarification on the commission. Now, the Owais report did not actually suggest a commission. The Owais report suggested a tribunal that is set up specially for dealing with electoral offenses. Now, if we set up a commission and yet we send it to the same courts as we all have now, maybe the electoral tribunal. The tribunals are not set up to try electoral, so they have to go to the normal courts. And of course, once you get to the normal courts, then the delays and every other thing, and then we will run into the trap that my distinguished friend has just pointed out now, that if somebody commits an offense and you don't punish that person immediately, and it takes 5 years or 6 years, maybe the person who also committed that offense has also been sworn into office and may also have immunity. What do you do in that circumstance? So I think that when we get to the public hearing and then all the other people come into it, we will now need to know the distinction between a commission and a tribunal specially made just to try electoral offenses. I really want to say that I support this effort for us to clean up our system, because the system as it is today does not produce very good results. I so support.
Senator Samegu.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sam Egu, I represent Ebonyi North Senatorial District. Mr. President, I stand up to support this well-articulated, well-researched paper, lead debate. What is happening in our country today, if we describe it as mere violence or offenses, it's just trying to be modest. Otherwise, what we have during the election is war, total war. Because in war, you kill people. In wars, you do the worst to eliminate your opponent. And that is where we have found ourselves in this country. The issue of the woman killed in Kogi, the issue of the journalists killed in Bayelsa, and many others are examples. And until something drastically is done, we will not get out of it. And it's a shame that a country like Nigeria, despite our development, despite our resources, both human and natural, we cannot conduct ordinary elections. So, Mr. President, because of the in-depth analysis and information contained in this lead debate, we do not need to waste our time more than to, because it's a popular debate. And I want to join my minority leader in saying that at the point of public hearing, we can now put in the necessary adjustments and contributions with regards to whether it's going to be a commission or tribunal, and again the adequate punishment for such embarrassment we have found ourselves. So without further debate, I want to strongly support this debate, and I will wish that this 9th Senate actually passes it, so because the whole country is actually waiting and they are complaining seriously about what is happening in our electoral process. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very distinguished colleagues, let me join in commending Senator Kyari for raising this very important issue. In our electoral reform effort, I believe it makes sense for us to deal with the issue of punishing electoral offenders. He was chairman of the committee on INEC in the last Senate, so unarguably, he understands what he's talking about. Mr. President, for over 10 years, there have been ongoing debates on the establishment of a body to punish electoral offenders. Now, there have been a lot of and concerns regarding this body. The first is that some Nigerians are of the view that there's so much bureaucracy in our system, and then if we can bring together some other agencies of government that perform similar functions, it will reduce the cost of governance. And so suggestions have been made to allow the Federal High Court to have original jurisdiction
on electoral matters. The second concern has been whether we establish a commission or a tribunal. In case of the tribunal, the problem has been that if you're going to set up a tribunal under a regular act of the parliament, now it will only have the powers and effects of a magistrate court. So that means that for it to have the powers of record, it means they have to amend the constitution to accommodate that tribunal, section 6 of the constitution. Now, which we know will take a lot of process and a long time. Now, regarding the commission, the fear has been that our experience as a country is that government in power, without exception, usually have the temptation of weaponizing such commissions. And you may be in government today and be in opposition tomorrow. So we must think as Nigerians and look at the future of such institution. So we must be wary of setting up a commission. So I therefore suggest that we rather look at the bill when it's sent to the committee, probably to look at the possibility of a tribunal as suggested by WIS committee. But even at that, we must also be wary of the composition of the tribunal to secure its independence and then impartiality. Because it is wrong if we sit here and then because of emotions we set a body in which we regret tomorrow. So I believe that we have sufficient experience regarding such institutions in Nigeria to guide us in setting up this. I agree entirely that if we don't punish offenders, the impunity will continue. But as wise men, we must borrow from the examples and the mistakes of the past to ensure that we have a body we will be proud of, be able to secure the fears of Nigerians and address the concerns in a way that Nigerians will be satisfied and our citizens will be protected. So I believe that this bill should go to the committee and let us have an appropriate public hearing so that Nigerians will be able to make their input and they will have a final product that will be able to address that fears and address it in such a way that is devoid of emotions and partisanship. So I support this bill, but I believe that we can subject it to vigorous consideration in order to get the best. If you look at other countries with similar institutions, none of them was elevated to the level of a commission. So we must also look at those institutions, those acts of parliament of different countries, and those efforts they've made in the past, make sure that we align ourselves with the best practices instead of over-legislating and creating institutions that end up being a monster against everybody, especially those who may be in opposition to tomorrow. So I believe that if we put our heads together, we can come up with something that will yield sufficient result and address our fears in a way that all of us will be proud of. So I commend the sponsor of this bill, and I believe that he will be elastic enough to accommodate other views and enable further consideration of this bill to yield the desired result. So I still support.
Distinguished colleagues, I have a long list, so I would advise that we restrict our comments to maximum of 3 minutes. Senator Alero.
I represent Kebbi Central. Mr. President, I rise to lend my support to this very important bill for the simple reason that it will sanitize our electoral process. We are all political actors here. During election, we employ all manner of tactics to ensure that we win election, to the extent that we don't care about the rules and regulations. Mr. President, it is high time
difficulties within this period to report to the nearest health facility. We're also advising all airlines to report any case of a passenger falling sick on board before the plane lands. That is a requirement in the agreement. Nigeria Port Health Services and Nigeria Center for Disease Control are on alert at our airports and other points of entry.
The loser congratulated the winner. But we are the biggest country in Africa. Our own election is fraught with a lot of controversies, with a lot of irregularities, a lot of malpractices. Why is it happening? It's simply because we don't care about the rules. We do everything with impunity. The only way we can stop this impunity is to introduce this electoral offenses tribunal. One of my colleagues is saying that this should go to the federal high court. I'm sorry, it will be the same way we are handling election offenses. It will only delay, the prosecution. The answer is electoral tribunal, where there will be summary trial, where everything will be time-bound. Cases will be heard and be determined within a period of only 3 months. Perhaps when we come to the public hearing, we will appear there and suggest ways and means how this thing can be done. Justice West Commission recommended tribunal, not commission. Unfortunately, when it went to the Federal Executive Council, it was dropped. Some senior lawyers in the Federal Executive Council suggested that electoral offenses should go to the Federal High Court. This is not the answer. The answer is let's go and deal with this offense. Otherwise, we will continue to have political leaders that are occupying office illegally, and they are worse than military who protest because they don't have any legitimacy. I'm sorry, electoral those who win election through fraud, through illegalities, are worse than military coup protests. And we should deal whatever we should deal with them decisively. Mr. President, we say we should limit our contribution to only 3 minutes.
The distinguished Senator Aleru, coup plotters normally are shot. They are normally tied to the stake and shot when they are not successful. Are you suggesting?
All sorts of atrocities.
Use your mic.
Sorry. They are the ones that commit all sorts of atrocities to the detriment of our citizens, to the detriment of our own polity. They are spoiling our name in the international scene. So, Mr. President, I support this bill. It should be passed expeditiously. Thank you.
Leader of the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise to passionately support this bill because I agree wholeheartedly with distinguished Senator Aleru when he characterized election riggers and purveyors of election violence as an existential threat to our democracy. And I do think most of my colleagues also, think the same. But I would rather, maybe advise, like our distinguished Ike Ekoremadu did, that as much as we want this issue, to come to the front burner, it is important that when we pass this second reading, we should invite people with cognate knowledge of election and election management during the public hearing of this particular issue.
Chief Whip. Senator Buhari, you can act.
Bureau, and it also has a tribunal. So there should be a commission in order to take care of the issue of equity and justice and the investigation of various electoral offences. Then it should be accompanied by a tribunal that is a creature of that same act, that adjudicates and metes out punishment to electoral offenders and purveyors of violence. But at this point, I think it is important to anybody who will want to contribute to this debate. But I think it's important for at this point, to emphasize the importance of getting to the next level. That is the level where the public hearing and our facilitation of the issues, concretely will matter, so that we can limit the debate and have time to go to other matters of importance. As much importance, national importance as this one is, I think we should allow the bill, to go to pass the second reading, so that we will go forward and see how we are going to concretize it in the body politic of the nation. I thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Sadiq Suleiman Umar.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Sadiq Suleiman Umar. I represent the decent and good people of Kwara North. Mr. President, I feel highly compelled to support this bid and contribute in this debate because I know, if nothing else, I'm one of the chief beneficiaries of a free and fair election, free of brigandage, name it. Mr. President, democracy and good governance starts with free and fair elections, free of rigging, killings, and brigandage. Any election that does not have the element of freeness and fairness defeats the purpose of democracy, and therefore those who benefit from such an election cannot actually claim moral authority of leadership. Mr. President, I therefore support this bill. I think that we have to do what needs to be done, that this bill should be modified as much as possible to ensure compliance and immediate implementation of punishing those who offend in our electoral processes. And this has to be done very, very fast so that people do not have the opportunity of cutting corners and delaying justice. Mr. President, sir, I therefore support this bill because I do think that as leaders, the only moral authority we do have to say we are leaders is to be elected on a free and fair basis, because there is no any explanation in the world we can give anybody where you have to kill your people. You have to rig elections to be a leader. Anyone who does this, naturally, even before the person is sworn in, is not ready to give good governance. You cannot lead a people with good governance if you have to participate in cheating them, in killing them. And therefore, in line with our legislative agenda, distinguished colleagues, whatever we have to do to deliver this to Nigerians is going to be a major achievement for us. I therefore support this bill, and we need to do whatever we need to do to make this a successful bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Roger Sokoracha.
Mr. President, my name Owole Anayorocha Sokoracha, Imo West. My distinguished colleagues, I saw your reaction, Mr. President, when Senator Haruru was talking about the severe punishment that should be meted to this group of people who create problems for us. Remember that the only source and the only way we can produce a leader is through this process of our electoral process. And when the process is rigged and we're given a bad leader, the entire nation suffers for it. So it is something that is very, very serious. Because if you bring a criminal to lead a country, and you know power does not change anybody. Power brings that which is inside you. In other words, if you're a criminal and you become a governor, you become His Excellency, the executive criminal governor, because it will change you. So we must be very careful.
Distinguished Senator Okorocha, we don't have such a title in Nigeria. Please, let's restrict ourselves to what we have.
Mr. Senate President, I'm only trying to elaborate the seriousness of the matter and dramatize it. So we understand the consequences of electoral malpractices. But the attention seems to have been focused on those who snatch ballot boxes and those who maim and kill and fight and do. But the main issue are those that conduct the election themselves. Because those that conduct the election, the INEC officials, the returning officers, and those who take a result sheet and write and will not conduct the election and declare themselves winner. This is where we should put more emphasis. What kind of punishment should be there? Because if you say to somebody that your punishment will be 2 years imprisonment, for instance, or 3 years imprisonment, and he collects 100 million to rig for you, of course, many Nigerians would like to go for 3 years imprisonment and take the 100 million. So it's not just that. There must be something stiffer sanctions that we must create in this new bill to ensure that people are deterred from committing any electoral offense. And Mr. President, just as a roundup, you agree with me that if democracy is practiced the way democracy should be practiced, many people holding offices today as elected officials are not qualified to do so. So this is, if we don't treat this, then where is democracy? So, Mr. President, I support Senator Kiari's bill for this electoral commission to serve as a check on activities of our electoral processes. Thank you.
Senator Sumata Demi.
I rise to support this bill and to say without any fear of contradiction, Mr. President, that there cannot be democracy in any nation where we do not have free and fair election. Misrepresentation, bad governance, misappropriation of funds, and all the shortcomings that we have witnessed over the years in our democratic rule was as a result of people of questionable characters finding their ways into elected position. Mr. President, I think the time has come for us not just to look at the possibility of having a tribunal. I think there's a need for a special court for electoral offenses. Mr. President, military government is almost, one can be tempted to say military government is a little better than having a democratic government place.
Senator Sumata Demi.
Mr. President,
we are in a democracy, please. I'm not sure if this is a popular position in this chamber.
I am saying, in essence, that rigging, having people who are rigged into elected position, having people rig into elected position is the worst thing that can happen to a people. People have said over the years that military government is the worst. But it's even worse when you have people who have not been elected forcing themselves on the people. Mr. President, I think we must look at the possibility of having a special court for electoral offenses. Mr. President, good governance is all that democracy is all about. But when people who are not elected find themselves into elected position, it's the worst thing that can happen to any nation. That's just the emphasis I want to put in place. I support this bill, and in supporting this bill, Mr. President, we must be looking at the punitive measures for rigging of election, for electoral offenses. Mr. President, when people of questionable character becomes leaders in a nation, then what is the future of that nation? When you talk about maladministration, misappropriation of public funds, it emanated because people without record, people without background were elected or were succeeded in having themselves in power. I'm saying, Mr. President, this is one of the best bills that we should all give support to. Because over the years, I'm sure we are all living witnesses to bad governance, bad representation in parliament, emanating from people who have succeeded in rigging. So I'm saying, in essence, this bill is very important. We must support this bill and make sure that we give all the support that is required, so that only men of women, men of honor, women of substance will be elected, not charlatans, not ragamuffins, not the dignities of the society. Coming to National Assembly making laws, people whose records are questionable, sitting and making laws.
Distinguished Senator Ademi, point of order. I think that point of order has been overtaken by events. Okay, Senator James, Manager, point of order.
It's a popular point of order.
Senator James, Manager, you said point of order. What point of order? No, there is no popular point of order. A point of order is a specific. Okay, I can see we can go ahead, but I think some of the submissions by our colleague Senator Smart Ademi are personal to him, so we don't have to worry so much. But I believe that some of the issues he raised are not popular inside this chamber. And I think he is entitled to his opinion. So the next person would be Senator Albert Basi Akpan.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished and respected colleague, Senator Albert Basi Akpan, Akwa Northeast. Mr. President, let me commend you, our leader, for allowing a robust debate on this issue, Mr. President. It means you feel the pulse of Nigerians. Mr. President, it is also quite unfortunate that the 2019 general election was conducted with the 2010 Electoral Act as amended. Mr. President, how I wish we were able to inject some innovations on the basis of the experiences we had in 2015. With an amendment Electoral Act in 2019 before the general election. Be that as it may, Mr. President, I still believe that democracy still remains the most acceptable form of governance. Mr. President, we are all products of elections, whether good, whether fair, or whether bad. Election remains an election. And in an election, there must be a winner. But be that as it may, Mr. President, I think it appears that the 9th National Assembly, or most especially the 9th Senate, will definitely write its name in the annals of history of democracy in this country. Mr. President, I believe very strongly that on the basis of the submissions and contributions that we have made since the inauguration of the 9th Senate, the 9th Senate or the 9th National Assembly is definitely bound to take its rightful place in history. Mr. President, I support it, and I'm sure every single 109 senators, including your home self, supports this lead debate. But it is on the basis of our personal contribution, Mr. President, that we can come to terms with the consensus that there is need for a better, a more refined electoral processes to guarantee a free, transparent, and credible elections in Nigeria. Mr. President, I pray the third time, that by 2023, on the basis of our collective contributions that we will make towards a better and a more refined electoral process, that the 2023 elections might turn out to be the best elections ever conducted in the history of this country. Mr. President, one thing is certain. The content of this debate is most profound. And I stand by the contributions of our leader. That even if you look at the Code of Conduct, we still have the Code of Conduct Bureau and the Code of Conduct Tribunal. So the same thing can equally be applied in this case. But we'll wait for the outcome of the public hearing. But let me commend you, Mr. President, for allowing a robust debate so that Nigerians will see and will know clearly the positions of the Senate towards a better electoral process in Nigeria. I thank you, Mr. President.
Senator George Thompson Sekibo, JPCON.
Mr. Senate President, my dear colleagues, I am Senator George Thompson Sekibo, Justice of the Peace and Commander of the Order of the Niger. I represent the Rivers East Electoral District. Mr. President, I rise to commend Mr. Kyari for coming up with this thought-provoking debate. As politicians, all of us we know, this request ought to have been done maybe years back. It's long overdue. But it's better late than never. So I think we are taking the path of rightness and the path of justice. If we achieve this, then we will be deepening the practice of democracy. If we are not able to achieve it, 2023 election will be worse. Simple reason. When a society has the laws and also the penalties and the offenders are not penalized, it will be a lawless society. First of all, we all have to forgive and forgive Nigerians who will not say that democracy is not good and military. That is not true. We are to make it good. That is why we are here. Mr. President, it is not democracy when you hijack ballot boxes and stuff them in your house, even when you are caught and you are not punished. You occupy a seat by stuffing ballot boxes and you are not punished. You will encourage the next man the next day. It is not democracy when INEC says if you are donating money to any candidate, it should not be more than 1 million, and somebody gives you 100 million. It's a public knowledge. If you transfer to your own account, no one investigated it, the law is there. INEC Electoral Act has many of these provisions. But the problem we have, who will implement these processes? When they arrest an offender and take him to the police station, he stays there for a couple of days and they let him go. When they arrest an offender, they take him to the court. Before the matter will even begin, the man who was helping that enabled him to or make him to commit the offense is already a big man on seat, and then the man intervenes. Let go. So we have a problem. We need the commission. We need it. We also need the tribunal. We need both. Let it be surplusage than having one and it's not enough. We need them. So at the commission, we carry out the administration, investigation, and other things of what has happened, while the tribunal will adjudicate on the offenses and then pass on penalty or punishment on those who have offended. I think that it is right time for us to start. If this commission had been there, many of the INEC officers will not be working there. Those who help, who aid in committing the crimes. If this commission has been there, the policemen will not be struggling to go to good states where they'll be giving more money or good money. If this had been there, like some of my colleagues have said, those people who are not really qualified but they have financial power not necessarily come to occupy those positions. So I think it's a right thing in the right direction. And thank you for giving all of us to voice out what we think about it. But to conclude it, I strongly support the lead debate that the second reading be taken. And I also pray that after it has gone through the public hearing, and then we conclude after the third year, the clause by clause debate at the third hearing, when it is sent out to for assent, they should assent to it. It's very important. If they don't assent to it, then 2023 election will be worse than what we have seen before. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Matthew Rogide.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Senator Matthew Rogide. I represent Edo South Central District. Mr. President, thank you very much for the privilege. This bill, I stand to support it in its entirety. And this is born out of the fact that the credibility of our elections, and in fact the integrity of our elections in the past years, Mr. President, have been compromised both by local and international monitors and observers as one of the worst places where you conduct free and fair elections. And if we come to find out the real reason, for this very negative, narration, is our elections have been fraught with all sorts of corruption, violence, and all of that. Mr. President, there is no amount of amendment we are going to do to our Electoral Act now. Ahead of the establishment of an institution that will meter serious repercussions for people who will perpetrate electoral offenses. Election, the way it is seen in our country, I believe it is because a lot of people don't even understand what it means. If they understand what it means, it is the worst, conduct of man inhumanity to man. Mr. President, the only acceptable means of gaining power is through election, meaning the ballot paper or whatever is given to the people to make their free choice, unhindered, where people submit or surrender their sovereignty. You are surrendering your sovereignty to somebody to represent you, to rule over you, your wife, your children, and somebody is saying, no, you don't have a right to exercise that sovereignty. I think nobody sees it. It's worse than armed robbery. When Senator Alero mentioned something, he captured it very succinctly before me, that anybody who commits, including political parties, who will perpetrate election corruption, they must be dealt with very ruthlessly. Because that is the only way we can bring credibility to our system. So I support it, and I want to say that countries too that have identified, this bill spoke to it very clearly, ranging from Philippines to Kenya, all these countries that have put in place bodies like this. They are not stupid. They probably have gone through the ugly experience just like we are going through it now. Therefore, Mr. President, I want to say, if we want to constitute the fear, is this issue of composition. Who has it, who does this? I don't think that one must underscore the merit in having to establish a tribunal. When we get to the bridge, we will cross it. For this bill, I want to thank my friend, Senator Kyari. You recall when Senator Kyari was chairman in the Senate of INEC. He did a whole lot. And then, of course, I think the submission that was made by the Senate, in the documents that constituted our own amendment, himself and the now Deputy Senate President did a whole lot of that work. And one of this was what was mentioned. But unfortunately, the establishment of this tribunal or commission was not there. The history that this thing dates back to the time of Justice Uwais, it has been a recurrent narrative. I think the Ninth Senate now has to make it a reality that in tribunal has to be established now. Thank you very much.
Senator Francis Adenigba, Father Usi.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, I support the efforts of Senator Kerry on this clean up on electoral system. At least in tune with the modern electoral system. The only thing I don't support is recommendation by Senator Adamuba recommending firing squad.
No, he didn't recommend firing squad.
We are the stakeholders. We are the practitioners. All of us here. We are the people that ignited the same violence. And now, we have left that stage. We are here under cool atmosphere. The boys we use are there, waiting again for 2023. We have to tell ourselves the truth. Today, if we decide that election will be free and fair, the Senate, the House of Rep, the various House of Assemblies and local government assemblies, it will be free and fair. But if we now say it is do or die, the way we have been doing it, and robbery, God, I don't see it as when somebody just wakes up and carries away electoral buses of almost 1,000 to 2,000 people, dashing the hope of these people, threw it inside water or burning it, that is robbery. If we decide today that we are going to back new electoral reform, automatically it will happen. And I know that Mr. President will sign a new clean electoral system that will just avoid violence. But what of the police? That is the security agency we normally use. Are they the same group, or we are going to reform them too? What of the boys we have been using? Are we going to reform them too? Because this is it's going to be a holistic cleanup. If we don't do that, we'll just continue to roll in the same environment. What we are going to do is to sit down and first of all agree that we are going to have clean electoral system. Not Justice Uwais. Justice Uwais has never been to the field. We are the players. And we who really ignited it should be able to tell them we are going to have free and fair electoral system. Whether we have 10 commissions or 20 tribunals or 100 this, we are still the same people. Where you see things being done on the field with impunity and nothing will happen, automatically we are going nowhere. We should decide now and sanitize the electoral system. I agree with my brother from Borno State, and whatever it will take, all of us should support him to have a good and international acceptable electoral system that is credible. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much, Senator Lorogbe.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Ibrahim Ayaw Loriegbe. I represent Kwara Central. Mr. President, I want to join my colleagues in commending my brother and colleague Senator Kerry and commending all the previous speakers. This particular bill is important, and I'm passionate about it because I have personal experience of being a victim and being a beneficiary, a victim of rigged election and unrigged election. Mr. President, my being in this chamber was delayed for 8 years because of experience of election rigging. So therefore, I will be a very good supporter of a clean-up system that will throw up elected officials based on the free will and free choice of the people. Mr. President, the angle I want to look at the issue is that we have, yes, the system has to be put in place, the legal framework. But in putting the legal framework, the debate about whether it's commission tribunal, I think I want to support those that have said that we have already in the system a kind of a framework that put up a commission, and through that commission we have a legal body that we try. The commission will be to be able to educate and administer. But what is important is that at the end of the day is for us to take out the prosecution of electoral offences from the regular court system and put it in the system just like we have for the trial of the normal election. That is to make it time-bound so that justice will not be delayed. But secondly, Mr. President, what will be important again is to look at another functions of INEC, which is about voter education and what I would call attitudinal change. Voter education in the sense that Nigerians need to understand, because as many people have said there, we have various crimes being committed because of probably attitude and understanding of what electoral process is. So the further education for people to understand that free choice is critical for democracy, and that is not a do or die matter. It shouldn't be a matter of life and death for people to be put into office. But secondly, it's also for the practitioners, just like the last speaker said, to also change attitude to how we take elections, how we see elections, to see it as a call to service, not a call to be there by all means or because one has to be there. So in view of this, I think the commission, in addition to trial and so on, may have to also perform the function of prevention. As we always said, is better than cure. Prevention means that the commission must have to be involved in engaging in educating both the voters and the various electoral players. Mr. President, I also want to emphasize the fact that in processing this bill at the committee level, we need to consult widely. We need to engage with experts in election matters. We need to be able to look at our previous experience as countries and share experience of other bodies, so that what we come up with will be that thing that will be acceptable to Nigerians and will be things that will last. Mr. President, I therefore support that we read this bill the second time and give it an expeditious processing so that it can be passed and be signed far early before preparation for the 2023 election start. Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity.
Senator Mahmoud Adambul Kachwa.
Thank you, Mr. President. I remain Adamu Muhammad Bulkachua, Senator representing Bauchi North Senatorial District. Senator Bauchi North, representing Bauchi North Senatorial District. Mr. President, I rise to support the establishment of this commission, but like Code of Conduct Tribunal, there is a bureau, and this commission will be like the bureau for code of conduct, and this one will be an election commission, offenses commission, but it needs a tribunal or a special court that will try the offenders of this of electoral offenses. So, Mr. President, if we establish this commission, which I support, there is need to establish a special courts that will handle all election offenses, so that the normal courts or where election petitions go to, if they are mixed together, it will create bottlenecks in the normal courts, and it will cause all these petitions and offenses to prolong far beyond even the life of the parliament where elections are conducted into. So I support the establishment of the commission, but there should be, along with it, establishment of special courts that will reduce the normal congestion of normal courts. Mr. President, I support this because there are so many election offenses that are committed, both by electorates, by governors, by parties, political parties that sponsor candidates. So if you look at it broadly, you will find that the commission will handle too many election offenses cases which will congest the courts. So I support it with the amendment that it should include special courts for election offenses. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Kola Balogun, Oyo South Central District. I rise to lend my voice to debate. I would like to disagree slightly with my colleague, Senator Fadansi. I think that this dialogue is necessary at this material time in the history of our nation. The day a patient agrees and admits that he's sick, his problem is half solved. We are all participants in this problem. We have had elections in which a candidate will be campaigning on the field vigorously, and some candidates will be boasting that there will be no election. I have experienced that personally, that this election is a foregone conclusion. We will write it. Where we are not going to win, ballot boxes will be snatched. They will even be boasting about it publicly. So when we have a situation like this, what that tells me is that most Nigerian politicians are Machiavellian in nature. And what we have forgotten is that even when Machiavelli is talking about all the end justify the means, he does not mean that all ends will justify all means. But unless we realize that, and we note the fact that in election matters, if we don't do things that will strengthen our democratic practice, all ends will not justify all means, because a fraudulent electoral process will end up giving us bad characters in governance, and that will not take us anywhere in this country. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I think we should have this commission. I support it wholeheartedly, but I think we should also take one step further. Beyond the commission, we should also have a special tribunal to try election offenders. This is one of the ways by which, in my opinion, we can strengthen our democracy and create a platform where credible people will be thrown up as a result of our electoral process. So, Mr. President, I rise to support this motion, and also to say that this is not a bad idea. We begin to dialogue about the problem, particularly I think that we are sending the right signal to Nigerians that we are serious about improving on our electoral process, a process that would have
round up, please.
We are craving for. I so submit, Mr. President.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Uche Lilan, representing Anambra Central. Mr. President, I want to lend my support to this bill. I want to say that it is high time we put stringent punishment for electoral offenders. Mr. President, I had the privilege of watching an election in Ghana. When I was in Ghana for that election, I didn't see one policeman on the street. The people came out freely, voted, and left. But in Nigeria on election day, it will look like a country that is in war. Policemen everywhere, military men everywhere. Mr. President, for this act of parliament to work, it behoves on us, the politicians. We are the people making election in Nigeria to look as if we are at war with each other. From one political party to the other political parties. From all the candidates of different political parties. Some people will be preparing for elections, other people will be preparing for violence. We are enacting this law as if we are enacting it for other people to follow. We are still the people that will make the environment conducive for normal electoral process to take place. There won't be any democracy without elected people in position. If we continue the way we are following election in this country, there won't be democracy again. This is the right time for us to get it right. This is the right time for us to decide as politicians whether we are going to maintain this democracy or we are going to scatter democracy. Mr. President, for some of us women, we know what we face in the hands of men on election day. Most men don't believe that they can get into elected office without being violent. There are so many people that wait to kidnap INEC staff, either to declare them winner or to destroy and mutilate election results. I thank God for a chairman of INEC today. I want to commend him, Mahmoud Yakubu. I want to commend him. Commend him heavily with his team. In this 1999 election, 2019 election, upon the height of provocation, he maintained decorum. He ensured free, fair, and credible elections in different states of this country. So it's not just putting this bill in place. It is us, politicians, deciding, resolving that we want to follow the elections the way the laws stipulated for us to follow those elections. Mr. President, I want to say that if we put certain measures in place to ensure that politicians keep to the rules of the game, and we make us those punishments to offenders, we will have proper elections in place. I want to commend my brother for bringing up this bill at this point in time. Also to say that we have to follow this bill to ensure that Mr. President signs it into law before the next elections. If what we saw in 2019 election happens again in 2023 election, Mr. President, our electors will not come out to vote anymore. If you look at the voter apathy we have in different states, where you have about 2 million registered voters, the actual result that will come out from that state will be about 300,000, 500,000, less than 23 or 25% of registered voters in different states. It shows us that people are tired of electoral violence in all the states. People are afraid. On election day, they go home to sleep, some buy papers and stay in their house because they don't want to risk their lives for politicians. And some of us, after voting us into power, you won't see them again in the state until another election. They will come with talks and intimidate the electorate and carry the result and go. So I think this is the right time. This bill is apt, and it has come at a time we need to get it ready before the next election. I support this, and I want to commend the mover and the sponsor of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. Distinguished colleagues, thank you for your various interventions. And let me join all those who spoke earlier to congratulate and commend the sponsor of this bill, Senator Wakari Kyari, for this very important bill. I believe that this is in keeping and in pursuit of our legislative agenda of ensuring that we sanitize the electoral environment in which we conduct our elections. So this bill is one of many, definitely, that will amend the Electoral Act, but even constitutional amendments and alterations will be made to that effect to ensure that the electoral processes and procedures are very well protected, that Nigerians, when they vote, those votes are genuine votes, that we stop people who abuse the process either because they are in power or they have money. I believe that it's out of patriotism that when some of our colleagues were making their contributions, they emphasize on having very stiff penalties. I recall that Senator Alero and so many others felt that the penalties must be stiff. I agree. The penalties must be such punitive enough that people would not like to indulge in this. This I will put the question. Those in favor that this bill be now read a second time, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to establish the National Electoral Offences Commission and for related matters 2020 second reading.
A bill for an act to establish the National Electoral Offences Commission and for related matters 2020 second reading taken, and the bill is referred to the Senate Committee on INEC to report back within 4 weeks. Of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the third order of the day is the second reading of the Federal University of Agriculture and Ambata, Kano State Establishment Etc. Bill 2020. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was read the first time in this chamber on Thursday, 5th December 2019. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Barrow Jibril to move the motion for the bill to be read the second time.
Senator Barrow Jibril.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Senator Barrow Jibril. I represent Kadandot. Mr. President, it's time to move that a bill for an act to establish a federal.
This is where we'll round off today's live broadcast of Senate plenary. Plenary is still ongoing, and at the moment, Senate has passed 5 bills for first reading, and then 2 bills have been passed through second reading. These 2 bills include a bill that seeks to establish the National Agriculture Development Fund and a bill that seeks to establish the National Electoral Offences Commission. It's at this point in time that we'll now hand you over to our studios for the continuation of the scheduled program for the day. I am Ignatius Unko, and on behalf of our outside broadcast crew, bye for now.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, permit me to lead the debate.
All persons arriving from China or any country that has a major outbreak is advised, if they have no symptoms at all, to self-isolate, meaning that they stay indoors in their homes for at least 2 weeks. And if they develop any symptoms, like cough, catarrh, sneezing, breathing difficulties within this period, to report to the nearest health facility. We're also advising all airlines to report any case of a passenger falling sick on board before the plane lands. That is a requirement in the agreement. Nigeria Port Health Services and Nigeria Center for Disease Control are on alert at our airports and other points of entry.
Imagine a station where you access information. Think of a station that creates awareness for national development. Imagine a station that prepares you for a bright and greater future. A station for all ages. Documentaries, classroom and television, events coverage, children's programs and variety shows. Always stay tuned to NTA Knowledge on the StarTimes platform, channel 359. For partnership, sponsorship and advert placements, contact us on NTA Knowledge. NTA Knowledge, learning to broaden horizon.